Baie welkom by die Afrikaanse Taalmonument. My naam is Samuel Minnaar. Ek is die museumbeampte van die Afrikaanse Taalmuseum wat onder in die Parel is, maar ons is een entiteit saam met die Taalmonument. So ja, net eerstens baie welkom aan almal. Met Jeugdag vanjaar was dit 47 jaar sedert die Soweto opstand plaasgevind het. So is byna 'n halwe eeu sedert die toenmalige departement van sogenaamde Bantu onderwys Afrikaans naas Engels as verpligte onderrigtaal vir swart skoliere wou maak. Dit het uitgeloop in die grootskaalse protes waaraan duisende skoliere deelgeneem het. Hierdie protes is gewelddadig onderdruk en het tragies tot die dood van mense gelei. Die rede vir die protes was egter nie soseer Afrikaans nie, maar die apartheidstelsel en sogenaamde Bantu onderwys as geheel. Nietemin, Afrikaans het groot skade gelei en die assosiasie as onderdrukkerstaal is bevestig. Soos alle tale is Afrikaans egter ook 'n meerduidige taal. Daar kan natuurlik debat gevoer word oor die mate waarin Afrikaans nog swaar dra as taal van die onderdrukker, maar Afrikaans het ook 'n belangrike rol gespeel as die taal van verzet. Dit was natuurlik ook die taal van die onderdruktes, van die miskendes, gesensureerdes ensovoorts. Veral na, maar ook lank voor 1976 is Afrikaans al ingespan as die taal van protes. Wat theater betref, en natuurlik aansluit by vandag, dink ek veral byvoorbeeld aan Adam Small se ouerhuise toe, wat natuurlik voorgeskryf word op skool en universiteit, en wat al in 1965 verskyn het, en sedert die vroeë 70s baie professionele speelvakke gehad het. Daar's natuurlik nog baie ander voorbeelde van Afrikaanse skrywers, digters, dramaturge wat nie geskroom het om die onreg van hul tyd uit te wys nie, om enkeles te noem, Pieter Snyder, Melvin Whiteboy, Leonard Koza, Andries Olifant, Elsie Huber, Andries Lebrink, daar's rarig baie wat mens by daai lys kan voeg. In 2023 het ons ook nie 'n tekort aan onregte om verzet oor aan te teken nie, en sal daar ooit 'n tyd aanbreek waar dit nie die geval is nie. Vandag is in sekere opsigte radikaal anders as 'n halwe eeu gelede, maar alle onregte het nie noodwendig weggeval nie, en nuwe onregte het natuurlik bygekom. Dit bring my dan by vandag, en hoe gaan skrywers, veral jong skrywers, soos julle, of jong mense, en in hierdie geval theatermakers om met hierdie gegevens? Is protes in die kunste nog 'n ding? En indien wel, bereik dit die regte gehore? En in daardie opsig is ons ook baie bevoorreg en sien ons baie uit om vandag vir Basil Appollis te hê. En ek gaan net 'n vinnige inleiding gee, hy sal dalk self ook nog sê. Maar hy is 'n veelbekroonde akteur, regisseur, vervaardiger en skrywer. Na hy in 1983 'n diploma in spraak en drama aan die Universiteit van Kaapstad behaal het, was hy al by meer as 200 produksies betrokke. Dit is ongelooflik baie. Insluitend vir die verhoog, televisie, film en musiek. Te veel om hier te noem, maar ek wil enkeles uitlig wat menigte Suid-Afrikaners sal ken. Namelijk Fishy Fashions, Madam and Eve van die baie ou werk. Maar hy het natuurlijk ook alweer baie werk intussen gedoen. Hy was onder meer ook mede-vervaardiger, regisseur en skrywer van die satirische program Democracy When. En onlangs Kertua, Eva van de Kaap, wat sedert 2018 al verskillende speelvakke nie net in Suid-Afrika gehad het nie, maar ook in Nederland. So ook 'n internasionale befaamde akteur, regisseur, skrywer, vervaardiger. En tans is hy besig met 2 groot dansproduksies wat op die oomblik speelvak het in Suid-Afrika. Toekennings wat hy al ingepalm het, sluit in Vita toekennings, Ghana's, Fiesta's en 'n Standard Bank Standing Ovation toekenning wat deur die National Arts Festival toegeken word. So ja, namens die ATM baie welkom en ons sien uit om vandag net te luister. So ja, dit is al van my kant af.
Dankie Samuel. Hallo, soos julle gehoor het, my naam is Basil Appollis en ek is gebore te Wellington, maar ek het opgegroeid in die Parel. My pa is van Wellington, my ma is van die Parel en hulle het mekaar ontmoet op die trein in die oggend. Hulle het altyd in die stad gewerk en dis waar hulle mekaar ontmoet het en 'n love story het daar begin. Wel, ek wil ons fokus vandag is protesteater. Protesteater. So ek het gister was ek baie besig om vir julle 'n baie mooi presentation uit te werk en met prentjies en YouTube clips van al die produksies Maar ongelukkig het ons niks wifi hier nie. Daai 2 laptops, daar kan nie my klip speel nie. So af en toe moet ek teruggaan na my laptop toe om te sien wat het ek eintlik daar geskryf. As ek sukkel. Maar ongelukkig ek kan dit nou nie vandag speel nie, maar ons gaan nie daaroor worry nie. Okay, en my eerste storie van protes was eintlik ek was 'n jong akteur in 1984 en die SAIK het audisies gehou. Jy weet, en ek is 'n jong akteur en ons is in die middel van apartheid. En natuurlik gaan ek na die audisie toe, maar hulle soek mense wat Afrikaans kan praat. En ons moes poesie voordra vir hierdie vervaardiger, producer. En ek weet, sy het so oorkante 'n lesenaar gesit, en dan kom jy in, en dan moet jy praat, en daar's klomp akteurs in die gang. En toe sê vir my daar was 2 stukke poesie wat ek toe moet voordra. Gelukkig het ek dit geken of iets soos dit. En ek het dit toe voorgedra. Maar toe ek weer kyk, toe die vervaardiger steeds agter haar lesenaar en sy het heeltemal verdwyn. Toe praat ek in die lug en ek dink, waar is die vrou? En toe sy opkyk en toe sy in trane en sy sê, Jene, dit was nou so mooi. En sy sê, as ek omgee nie, moet ek net 'n bietjie gaan wag en ek gaan weer. Sy wil gou hê die CEO van die SAIK moet afkom hiernatoe en dan gaan hulle vir my weer terugroep. Anyway, toe roep hulle vir my weer terug en hulle dink net my poesie was perfek en sy het gehuil, sy het in trane uitgebaat en sy wou nie vir my wys dat sy in trane is nie. En eers die volgende dag, toe sê hulle vir my, Basil, jy is gekies om by die Taalmonument vir P.W. Botha die poesie te lees, die 2. En daar is geld verbonden, die Taalmonument was daar 10 jaar, dit is ek reg? 10 jaar, dit was 10 jaar herdenking van die Taalmonument. En ek sê toe vir hulle, baie dankie, maar ek gaan nie doen. Dit is teen my beginsels, nommer 1, die Taalmonument, ons boycott die Taalmonument, 1976 het nou die dag net gebeur, en my familie gaan nooit weer met my praat as ek na die Taalmonument toe gaan. Dat mens was heeltemal verbuisterd dat ek toe die aanbod van die hand wys. En hulle het my gebel en gesê, Basil, asseblief, kom, jy weet, daar gaan kore wees en jy doen net 3 stukke poesie. Ek sê ongelukkig nie. Veral my pa gaan glad nie weer met my praat nie. Ek sal my saak stel aan my familie en ek gaan dit eers probeer doen nie. Want dis heeltemal teen ons beginsels om dan na die Taalmonument te gaan. So dit was my eerste protes teen die Taalmonument. En ek weet, ek het op stadium gesê, ek weet nie eens hoekom daar 'n Taalmonument is nie. Taalmonumente word gebou of kom as mense dood is. Taal is mos nie dood nie. Jy weet, 'n monument moet net daar wees as iets of iemand dood is. Wel, die afspraak van die hele storie was hulle vir my gesê, jy gaan nooit weer werk kry in hierdie Weskaap nie. En dit was die einde van die storie. En jy moet onthou dat ons praat van 'n tyd waar ek nog nie toegelaat was om te speel of werk te kry by die streeksrade nie. En dit is toe hoe die Baxter Theater word toe my huis vir 'n hele aantal jare, want daar het hulle die Werkswinkel tot vandag toe is verbonde aan die Universiteit van Kaapstad. En dit is hoe hulle om die wet kon kom van apartheid, is om dit deel te maak van die universiteit en die universiteit daarvoor het 'n lisensie gehad om alle rasse daar toe te laat. En okay, so daar is my eerste vorm van protes. Maar net so 'n bietjie geskiedenis. Ek het gestudeer na my matriek hier. Ek was by Noorderberg. Noorderberg Hoërskool, maar laerskool het ek rondgetravel. Kyk, ek was seker by 5. Ons het begin in Ceres. Ek is gebore te Wellington, maar my pa het skool gehou in Ceres. So ek is op Ceres groot geword, op 'n plaas. Daarna het ek ons Wellington, het ek by my ouma gaan bly in Wellington, toe Wellington skool gegaan. En toe eers hier by St. 4, toe kom ek Parel toe kom ek by William Lloyd skool gaan, St. 4 en 5, en dan my hoërskool was Noorderberg. Daarna is ek na die Universiteit van Weskaap toe, maar net vir 'n jaar. Ek wou altyd drama gestudeer. En daarna is ek na UCT toe om speech en drama te gaan studeer. 1984 is ek klaar en nou is ek vryskut. Nou moet ek werk soek en so aan. Om 'n lang storie kort te maak, ek daarna gegaan ek het 'n regisseurkursus gedoen in Londen, wat ek deur die British Council beheers gekry het. En ek het 'n jaar daar gestudeer. En in later jare het ek 'n skrywerskursus gaan doen in Nederland by die Malmö Film Institute. So daar is al my education. En dan was ek ook visiting director by ICA, by UCT vir 6 maande. En dan ook nog 6 maande as 'n resident director, waar jy weet, dit is my alma mater, dan nooi hulle vir my terug om nog te kom vir 6 maande. Dan het ek op boards gewees, was founder member van die Actors Center in Johannesburg. Ek het vir 'n lang tyd het ek daar gebly. En soos Samuel vroeër gesê het, was ek al deel van sekere omtrent 200 produksies oor die jaar vir radio, televisie, film, meestal theater, want daar is my eerste liefde. Okay? Maar dit is te veel om van te vertel. So, ek gaan vir julle net vertel van protesteater en protesteaterstukke wat ek al gedoen het en ek by verbonde was. En die eerste een, omdat ek sien dat daar's uitstalling hier van Dulcie September. Okay? En Dulcie September sy was onderwyseres. En een Athlone school gehou, maar sy was ook activist, a political activist. Okay? En sy is toe verskeie politieke partye het sy aan behoort, Yuchi Chang Club, julle kan lekker gaan oplees van haar, want dit is alles daarvoor in die voorportaal. Maar die storie is dat Denise Newman, julle ken almal vir Denise Newman, sy speel in die CB Suidooster op die oomblik. Toe ek in 2008 terugkom, ja, sien ek en Denise mekaar, ons het vreeslik baie saamgewerk, voor ek in Johannesburg gebly het vir omtrent 20 jaar. Maar het ons baie saamgewerk in die vroeë jare as akteur. En dan sien ons mekaar so en dan sê ons nee, ons moet iets doen, ons moet weer iets saam doen. En toe het ons ontmoet een oggend vir koffie en sy het 3 projekte gehad wat sy voel sy wil saam met my doen. Die 2 ander projekte was om saam met haar te act in 'n 2-man-stuk en so. Maar toe sy die naam Delsie September noem, toe sê ek, okay, ons weet nie baie van Delsie se lewe af net so. Ken jy miskien, is daar mense wat nog lewe? Delsie September is op 'n exit permit. Julle jong mense sal nie weet wat so exit permit is. Maar 'n exit permit is wanneer jy to haar house arrest, en ek gaan dit so 'n bietjie Engels op praat, want ek het vanoggend Engels opgestaan. She was in jail for many years, for 5 years, and when she came out of jail, they put you on the house arrest. And house arrest is almost like jail, except now you're paying for yourself. Okay, so you can go home, but there will be security policemen in front of your house who stand there day and night. You are not allowed, dis amper soos COVID, hard lockdown, waar jy in jou huis moet bly, jy mag nie buitekant gesien word nie, behalwe daar staan polisie buitekant die hek, om te sien dat jy nie uitloop nie. En toe haar 5 jaar, na 5 jaar aan die house arrest, in fact, sy het op 'n stadium haar house arrest, deel van haar house arrest, was ook hier in die Parel, by haar sister of cousin, het sy kom bly in die Parel. En dan moet jy aansoek doen om nou by jou sister of so te bly, en dan, en die dag toe die house arrest, when that expired, toe is sy op 'n boot en sy gaan toe Engeland toe op 'n exit permit. En 'n exit permit beteken dat jy mag nooit weer terugkom Suid-Afrika toe nie. En dit is hoe Delsie September toe weg is. En na 'n paar jaar het sy die representative, she became the representative of the ANC overseas, and she represented them in Paris, Luxembourg, and but in 1988 she was taking out her post from her post box there in Paris at her office when a gunman shot her 5 bullets in the head. She was killed immediately, assassination. And of course, at the time, it said it was, it was the South African operatives working in London, except, it's a political story. So politics is a messy game. So you don't really know who was responsible for Delsie's death, because her replacement, who organized her funeral, was an ANC member, for example, who took over from her. He was fully protected by the French government, and before long, it was found that the person who took over from her, he was a spy within the ANC, working in Europe. And he died shortly after. This was discovered shortly before his death. So, to cut a long story short, Denise and I went with this production to do the National Arts Festival, which happens this time of the year. And we won an award. We won 2 awards there, an Ovation Award, and we won the Adelaide Tambo Humanitarian Award for that production. And later on, couple of years later, to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Dulcie's death, we performed it in Paris for a whole month. And in Paris, it is quite ironic, because in Paris, there are schools named after, there are streets named after Dulcie September, and what we didn't know, and how they're hiding this, the whole thing about her death in South Africa. We forgot about her very quickly. But in Paris, something like 60,000 people took to the streets on the day that she died to protest against the assassination, that took place, and a political murder, as they called it. But 60,000 people actually came to her funeral. It was a big stadium, etc., and that's how big it was in Paris. And in Jeugdag, where she or lived, is a big college named after her. We went to visit the college, and it's a story of protest to show injustice in this world. Okay? The other one is Richard Reeve. I'm going to focus on Richard Reeve, and I prepared and learnt the lines of Richard Reeve, because that's my own show. And we played these two productions in tandem, like one night Denise, the other night myself, and it's called My Word, Redesigning Buckingham Palace. And that he was another teacher who was also a writer / activist. And we called the two productions that we did a class of one, which are both one-man shows, and it was focusing on teachers. And Richard was also on the eve of the play Buckingham Palace. I don't know if you are familiar with that novel. Are you reading it? Anyone here has read it? Yes, that is a prescribed. It's sometimes prescribed, and it used to be for matriculants, and now it's sort of moved down to grade 7 or 8. But my personal relationship, or I didn't have a relationship with Richard when they told me, Basil, I was in fact studying in London when they said, well, when is your studies finishing? We want you to come to South Africa to come and do, first of all, a Shakespeare play, but then we would like to know if you know Richard Reeve. And when you're a freelance actor, you always just say yes, even if you don't know them. You just say yes. And I said yes. And then I got into the phone with friends. I said, who is this Richard guy? They said, you look a bit like him, so that is probably why they want you to play. And Richard's work was banned in South Africa. It's when you read Buckingham Palace, it's so funny, it's so ironic, and you wonder why the work was banned. But there were a lot of hard-hitting stories talking about injustice, at the same thing, which is protest, Protest is storytelling, but lifting up and holding a mirror up to society to tell you that the way you think of this is wrong. Can you change your perception? Can you change your attitude towards this? And you're lucky, you can play to 500 people, and you're lucky if you change perception of 2 people, but that's a lot, okay? And that is the point of protest theatre. I also need to say about protest theatre, it is a word coined, and it's a concept coined a long, long time ago, but it became especially prominent in South Africa during the 80s, When we took stories like John Carney's The Island and Sizwe Banzi's Dead, where we highlighted apartheid and actually showed the world what is happening in South Africa. But in essence, they are actually just good stories, and it's good storytelling, and then it became a kind of identity that for protest theatre, you don't need a lot of sets, you don't need a lot of costumes, you do it very simply, etc., etc. But it is actually good storytellers, and these productions won awards all over the world because people related to simple storytelling, So Richard, I played him, I played the role of Richard, and I met him for exactly 1 month. And when I started reading these things, I realized that Richard is actually writing about people and stories that I know. I grew up for 2 years of my life, 2 or 3 years, we lived in Noordepal, which is Skoolstraat. Skoolstraat had a real sense of community. When we got there, we played in the road, we still played tennis balls over the electric line. Everybody knew each other. There were a couple of churches, but it was a really tight-knit community. And I was so glad that I lived there as a teenager and had lots of friends and disappeared. You must just be home before the sun goes down. But everyone in Skoolstraat was also a parent. And then the Group Areas Act came, and we all had to move to New Orleans. And where that whole sense of community, was lost, and it was just gone. And then when I met and read Richard's work, I thought, well, here's a man who's really articulating the stuff that I know. He's writing about my people. It's our stories that he's writing about. And that was my connection to him. And just the night before the opening night, and I'm going to act a little bit from that one-man show for you, just before the opening, he was murdered. And it was said it was a robbery, etc., etc. He was murdered. We opened like 2 or 3 nights later, but to honor Richard, the show must go on, as they say. And we opened the show, and this show has also become part of my, it's like my response to Denise about Dallas in September. I said, you can put this show and this story into your suitcase, and we're going to go around the world. And Richard, in my case, was into my suitcase, and in 2014, to celebrate 20 years of democracy in London, I had the opportunity to perform it on the West End in London to celebrate 20 years of democracy in my one-man show. So that show became part of my whole career, my life, my everything, Development of a television series several times has been underway. Nobody's got enough money to pay for it because it's quite a big story. And it talks about a whole community being lifted, much in the way that Skoolstraat was for whites, or declared for whites only, and we all had to move. Okay, what did I have next? Krutua. Do you know the story of Krutua? Who knows the story of Krutua? Jy ken so 'n bietjie daarvan. Okay. I see a head nodding there. Jy ken die storie van Krutua? Okay, kan jy vir sê wat jy weet? Okay. Hy Nee, dit is Saartjie Baartman. Saartjie Baartman is nog 'n storie. Sy het Engeland toe gegaan, of nie, Europa toe gegaan, maar Saartjie Baartman se bene was daar in Parys. En wat gebeur is dat sy was opgeneem, haar bene was opgeneem in 'n museum en hulle het dit net nooit toegelaat dat Saartjie Baartman se bene terugkom nie, want dit was 'n unieke storie, etc. Tot dat, kyk, die negotiation between government can take a long time, but they were not going to get those bones until Diana Ferris wrote the poem, I've Come to Take You Home. And that made such an impression on the French government. And the poem had such an impact that the French government said, no, we have to take these bones. They must be returned. And she was buried in the Eastern Cape in Hankey, where she was originally from. And they had a proper burial for her. And to this day, there's a monument now in what is it? I'll tell you how the story came about. I was doing a play that included a Malay choir, and the story was about Idia du Plessis. He was a poet, Afrikaans poet. Most famous poems, Vervlenderde Kaalvoet Klonkie and Vreemde Liefde. So in the story, I did his story, but it included a whole lot of a Malay choir, because he worked in the Home Affairs office, and they say that he was responsible for saving the Boerkaap from the Group Areas Act, if you ever wondered why the Boerkaap wasn't affected by the Group Areas Act, but it was because he had a lover there in the Boerkaap. And he also became, he's still today the honorary member of the chairperson, he died a long time ago, of the Malay choirs, one of the Malay choirs. Anyway, and then some Dutch company had folks, ouerhuise. They were in South Africa. They asked me to come to breakfast, and after 3 hours of eating breakfast and telling stories, they asked me if I would be interested in co-producing the story of Kretua with them. And for 2 years, I said no, simply because it's a complex story. It's a story mostly about identity, right, of where we come from, who we are, where we come from. And who she is, basically, in broad strokes, she was a 12-year-old girl who ended up in Jan van Riebeeck's kitchen, basically, to help Maria, etc., but she could speak 5 languages. She became a kind of translator for Jan van Riebeeck between her own people and the Dutch and the Europeans, and later on was responsible for keeping the peace between these two nations. And then we were going to do it all together, and then, they kept asking me, please, let's do this. So 2 years later, they said, okay, we're going to change. Basil, you write it, you direct it. We've changed our way of working with the other countries. Please write it, please direct it, etc. Because from your letters, we can see that you have access to more stories and research than we have. So I said, now that I have that license, I must tell you, I cannot write it. A woman must write it. And Sylvia and I have been working and collaborating on Dulcie September and A Writer's Last Word, or My Word. She must write it. And she must write it alone, because if we have 3 men, middle-aged men, or old men almost, again, writing about kultuur, we are repeating history. We need a woman to write this story, and that is how I approached Sylvia and said, please, let's write a story about kultuur. And the collaboration was between the Dutch and South Africa, and in 2018 we traveled for 3 months to the Netherlands, where we played it all over there, and then we came back, but it's in South Africa where it found resonance. That story really resonated in Cape Town, and it was brought back 3 times. In fact, during one of the COVID seasons, the embassy came on board and wanted to do it again, and then we had to cut out the Netherlands because they couldn't travel, or they could travel, but they had to go into quarantine. We recast it with South African actors, and this production has kept me busy for at least 5 years so far. And last year at the Woordfeest, it played to like 1,500 young people like yourselves at the festival. Okay, let's watch.
Vir eeuwe lank niks. Skaars my naam geken. Kratua. God was die een wat hulle toe Eva noem. Nou skielik al die geraas, die geskreeuw. Demands to dig up my bones, reburial. Daar's die wat monumente wil hê. Monumental demands. Mense het begin praat van die versteekte dade. Ons moet met die hele storie vorendag kom.
Ik heb alles gezegd wat er te zeggen is. Het staat allemaal in het dagregister.
Die ongeskrewe woorde, die niet gezegd, het begin dreuren. Kaal en skaam en skraap. Wanneer julle aan tafel sit, sê niemand wat hulle bedoel nie. Kry sy 'n plan. Nou die ander dag, toe ek alleen was, kat op die tafel geloop, heel paar keer op en af. Vir altyd gemerk in 'n vreemde kerk, sonder vel of lied van my eie. Daai dag het iets verdwyn.
Who caused the terrible drought? You know, he closed up all our streets. The children own our land. All the children own our dance. Oh, God.
Needs a bit of explanation because it looks like we had musicians, 2 musicians and 2 actors, and the setting was that they, in 20 or whatever the time was, in today's time, they were 2 actors making a movie about the historic story of kultuur. So in between shooting the film and those historic scenes, the 2 actors, one from South Africa and one from the Netherlands, are dealing with their own struggles of their personal struggles, but well as their challenges with playing the roles of Jan van Riebeeck and kultuur. Okay, so it was very complex. It was nicely complex because the actors, the 2 actors, didn't really get on, you know, because kultuur is saying, this is what you did to my people. And he's saying, yeah, but I don't know how to play such an awful man, you know, because he's not like that, or whatever. So it was really about their struggles also as actors while we played out the historic story. That was the setting for kultuur, and if we do it again, I hope you all can come and see it. What else did we have? Yeah, the next thing is Dance of the Legumas, Dance of the Legumas is another story about another writer who came from District 6. And Alex Laguna, it will be his centenary next year. He will be 100 years old. But Dance of the Legumas is really one that a writer, again, the District 6 Museum asked me to tackle this project. And again, I had to go and look him up. I had to go and do my research about Alex Laguma because he's a brilliant writer and he's almost forgotten. He's written quite a volume. In fact, I was so surprised. He wrote more novels than someone like Richard Reeve, whom I admired. But Alex Laguma wrote a lot of novels. He was very popular in Russia, and his father was also one of the belonged to the Communist Party, had been to Russia, and in Russia people read his books. When Alex turned 60 years old, he, for example, went to Moscow, and these publishers ordered something like thousands of books in his honor, and at the party he thought, how come thousands of books, who's going to buy it? And he said in no time at all, it was all sold out because people queued up to have his signature. Even Alex was taken by surprise with how popular he was in Russia. But once again, this is one of the writers that was, sort of almost erased from our history. Students read up about him at universities, so it's a handful of students actually who knows his work, and there are some serious scholars at the moment in this world, doing his work. Unfortunately, last year I couldn't really stay for the full run. The production opened, and next week I was flat on my back in the hospital, and I don't have a clip for you, but there are fantastic photographs. This is Artscape, the 50th. But there are fantastic photographs that I will show you later about the Alex Laguma play, which we did last year, and we're doing it next year again, probably in Cape Town and in Johannesburg. And what I did with that, I wrote a love story between him and his wife, which was a real love story, and they ended up in Cuba being representatives once again of the ANC, which is where Alex Laguma died at the age of 66. He was a very young man when he died, and he's still buried there. But his wife, Blanche Laguma, she is 95 years old, or she was 95 now, she's now 96, and she could attend the opening night at Artscape. All right, now let me first tell the story. When was it? During COVID. This is COVID casualty time. I'm doing Artscape, that place where I couldn't perform, asked me to direct and put together their 50th anniversary celebration. Okay, and that was during COVID, 21 to 22, I don't know. So I just want you to listen, because we're still staying with the focus of protest. And this, although it wasn't protest, I said to them, I can't just do a story without its history. And I'm telling you this because when you are looking at your personal stories, when you're looking at any institution, the Taal Monument, etc., if you do the history of it, you have to tell it like it is. So I just have a couple of seconds of my voiceover telling the story, and it was a big project because we had the orchestra, the Cape Town City Orchestra was part of it, the ballet company was part of it, the opera company was part of it, etc. So it was really huge, but as I say, I couldn't tell a story with ignoring the history. And the history for me was the most important and the only reason why I agreed to tell the story in the end.
Artscape's building is finally finished in 1971. It settles on more than 1,000 concrete slabs. If stacked up on top of each other, it would be 11 times the height of Table Mountain. It's the pet passion project of Dr. Nico Malan, the Cape's administrator of the time. So, of course, it's named after him. The Nico Malan cost a huge 12 million rand at the time, almost R1 billion today. Only whites are allowed in its audience, its restaurant, its toilets, even on its stages. The building is an unashamed showpiece celebration of apartheid and the power of the ruling Nationalist Party. It juts out like a brutal scar on Cape Town's foreshore, a symbol, a reminder of the power, the evil of apartheid. But edifices built to glorify a dark past can be imbued with a new vision.
All right, so that's an idea of how you put things into context. It can't just be told, I can't just have the orchestra and it's now new and etc. The choir at the moment, it also has a story, you know. When the Nico Malan was built, black people were not allowed there, but they, for example, had a big choir, right? And the choir was also all white. So even if you were in the choir, they used to hire white people from Europe to sing in the choir. When this opened up in 1994, I think there's one white person in the choir today. It is 99% black, okay? Because it just shows how many people can sing in South Africa. And when you ask the choir, how come this comes so naturally to you, they will always say, we sing every day. We go to church and we sing. We come home and we sing. We sing in the schools, you know. So even opera, the medium of opera was like second nature to all of these things. I think we are ready for a little break, and during this break, I want to, which will be a 10 minutes long, to make it to 10-15 minutes long. During this break, I want you to tell me, to think about a story, any story, mostly personal story, that comes from your history, that comes from your family, whether it's a story about your uncle, of your auntie, you know, most charismatic people in your family. And I want to hear, you only have 1 minute to tell the story, okay? But I would like you to think of a story, any particular story, and that is to show you that we are all natural storytellers, okay? We are all natural storytellers, and when you think of your families, there's always one person who can capture a room full of people because they can tell stories, right? That you hang on to their every word, etc. Okay, let's break for 10. Okay, because we have worked so hard on this, we thought we'll show you all the clips that we didn't see earlier. Okay, so this is the story about, well, it's just a trailer. It's a trailer about September.
In the
the bustle of the early morning, no one hears the shots from a .22 rifle. Who killed Dulcie September? Nobody knows. There were theories bandied about, but nobody actually has come forward to say, I did it, or this organization did it, or so-and-so commissioned the assassination. And I always thought, here was this woman who spent her life. She never married, she never had children. She spent her entire life fighting for human rights. Unleashed. When 5 bullets ended my life, suddenly, on a misty Paris morning.
The research was partly an investigation.
Yeah.
There was one journalist that is still writing the story, as Denise said, comes up in the press, but it's like the case is cold. No one's actually really prepared to reopen that case.
The trial, jail, and banning order took 10 years of my life. In my experience, it was, we need to celebrate the life and not just focus on the death, but to celebrate that life. It was for me very important because she was feisty and strong and ventured into territory that used to be quite a male-dominated territory, and we need those kinds of role models, those people who broke down barriers and said, I am passionate about this, and I am going to actually go ahead and step in and step up to the plate and be involved. So, yeah, viva Dulcie.
Okay. All right. That is one clip about Dulcie, but as I say, on the boards in front, in the foyer, I was surprised to find that there is a whole exhibition here. That exhibition also traveled with us to Paris, and we managed to show. I will, a class of one is a reference and a play on the word that they are both teachers and were both in classrooms, and they were both one-person shows, okay, which is mostly focusing on storytelling, as it were. Okay, and these plays, actually I must tell you that these plays come back from time to time. They come back from, especially during Women's Month, which is August coming up. Denise and I do Dulcie September again, and it has been over the years. We do it every year at Artscape to celebrate Women's Month. Okay. Last time we spoke about dance of the Lagumas, and we've got photographs because we relied very much. Can we switch the lights off? We relied very much on AV. So I haven't got a clip for you to show. As I said, I had some health issues last year, but here's some wonderful photographs of the love story. That is Elton Landru playing Alex Laguma, and Rihanna Abrams playing Blanche Laguma. And okay. Do you have the photos? We'll show you the opening night when. Which was, this probably put the cherry on the cake because Blanche was actually in the audience, and this is the only clip that was done on the last night. I wasn't there, but we managed to that was opening night, and we managed to capture this. There we are, all on the stage, and Marlene is giving flowers to all the players, directors, writers.
Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
story.
Thank you for this story. Wonderful.
All right. It's probably one of the biggest honors when you tell a story about somebody who's just still alive, and she's in the audience, and what she said to me, and she said that was fantastic. Okay, so it's a great honor as a director and a writer that you managed to capture life, and she approved, you know, because sometimes people can come and say, no, that wasn't. Okay, I think we did. Okay, here's some photographs. I relied heavily on AV for this particular production, and it is mostly this. All of you, this is symbolic AV. Okay, this is a scene where the security policeman interrogates Alex Laguma. And Alex Laguma is another character who spent most of his life in prison. In fact, that is where he could write, because he was, you know, they let him out. He was also, at the time, there was a thing called 90 days, I don't know, yeah, it was 90 days without arrest. You know, they would put you in prison for 90 days, right? And Alex Laguma was also 90 days without trial. Yeah, without trial, they could put you in prison for 90 days, and Alex Laguma was one of the first people who he stepped out of the prison for 90 days, and they arrested him outside the gate again. So he went for another 90 days. And legally they were covered themselves by releasing him after 90 days. Then he goes outside, just outside the gate of the prison. They arrest him again and they put him back for another 90 days. There was also a case that in one of the raids at their homes, while he was under house arrest, the security police came, raided the house, and was quite wild. They were brutal. You know, they would go rip out your lounge suites looking for documents of a certain kind. And at one stage they arrested Blanche as well. So they both were in prison. They released Blanche after 90 days in solitary confinement, and Alex remained in prison. And then it was so bizarre, really, the laws of the time, is that they were staying in Wynberg. Then Blanche must apply to the Wynberg police station, which is that district. She was banned and she had to stay within that district. If she wants to go and visit her husband in Woodstock, she must apply for a permit to go from Wynberg to Woodstock area. And you know, just to go and visit him, and then must travel back to go home, and then she needs another permit
to go home, which is, we are in the same city. So they had the same situation. This was a symbolic portrayal of real archive photographs, and it's a combination of windows and doors in District 6. And that is that's the area where they met and where they fell in love, etc. So we use that as a symbolic reference to District 6. And that is here, Alex in Moscow. He was, he was a communist, and he visited Moscow quite often. As I say, he was very popular, and his books sold very well. And that is Alex. So we managed to, on the screen, right at the end of the play, do some of his writing in longhand, because those days in prison he had to write with longhand, and so he wrote his first novel actually being incarcerated, being in prison. Okay. And this is one day, this is the Hero's Acre that they call in Havana, Cuba, where Alex lies buried, and it was very sudden. One day he complained about a chest pain. Blanche drove him to the hospital, and he mentioned her name. That's the last word he actually said, because afterwards she realized that Alex already died in the car while she was driving him to a hospital, and that is where he lies buried in Havana, Cuba. That all those effigies are really from the archive footage of the real burial grounds in Havana. Okay, that is back to the class of one. Imam Harun, I did this particular tribute. It was more like a concert come storytelling tribute, and I just put this, I almost forgot about this, but I directed this particular tribute. As you can see, Aidan Thomas was the MC, and collected stories. He was also a political activist, and he actually died in prison because of the torture. The torture that he underwent. He was Imam Harun, and he was a political activist. He was again one of those stories that lies buried. But the irony of Imam Harun is he died in prison, and a Muslim Islam religion requires for you to be buried on the same day. However, his funeral was kept for 2 days. He was obviously tortured. They killed him, basically, in prison. In fact, his case is now coming up. The family has now reopened the case. And since the last 2 years, to look at how he died. And on the day that he was buried, also, the whole of Cape Town came together. They were just like a sea of people, because they came from everywhere, from Balfour, from everywhere, to join the procession of Imam Harun. And it is significant because the minute they put him into the ground as burial, South Africa experienced the biggest earthquake ever. It was in the 60s, and most affected areas were serious. Well, that was a big affected area, but even Jeugdag and serious, mostly in there. But they said the minute they they put him in that same night when they buried Imam Harun. You just would sit in the house and the walls would start going, and and I opened the show with that procession of just fezzes, white fezzes, coming together in the theatre, etc., with a prayer, but much like the symbolic reference of his particular funeral. But the keeper of the kum, that is also going back to our ancestry. This is based on Sylvia Wagner's book called The Keeper of the Kum, which just means, kum means story. So it's keeper of this story. I adapted it and made it into a play, and it was a dance drama. Okay? And these are photographs from that. And we can look at a clip.
But what would you know, white boy? Why are we here? I'll tell you why we're here. My people are fucked up!
The cool dance is more powerful than all the doctors and experts you've been to. But we carry our stories, our letters in our bodies. And we are connected to the stars. We must walk the sky, for we are heaven's things. Our stories, they tap, they talk, they quiver.
Read or write?
We feel in this manner. We feel a sensation. Our letters, our stories in our bodies.
Illiterate.
Nee, jong. Onze mensen. Als ik me smallen.
Stories know no boundaries of time and space. Stories know no limits of place. The Kun, our stories travel from one realm to the next as easily as mountain streams fall into the ocean. It is given to few to be the keepers of the Kun, to protect the treasures that touch the hearts of the people. Cabo and the keepers roam the astral plains at will, wielding Kun stories powerful enough to hold the world in place. A keeper is a servant of the Kun.
Gangans. Kwai kwes. Ek is Elizabeth Peterson met 'n naaldstring van verbintenis aan slawe, koloniste en groot sieners. 'n Bushman kind. 'n Bushman first and last. If Africa is the birthplace of humanity, then we are all children of the sun.
And that is Keep of the Kun. That is also a production I adapted and directed for Artscape and also the National Arts Festival. In fact, that is where we started. It's again about identity, who we are, where we're from, because, yes,
Sorry,
no,
what's the music? What's the didgeridoo music?
it is the bow, string bow with a calabash. What is it called? Ouerhuise, but mostly it's bow music. And we had a live musician on the stage, and that was Hilton Shoulder composed music for the dance drama. It's the ouerhuise, yes. And as I say, we collaborated with Garage Dance on that. And this is my current production. Earlier today, this morning, I still look at my email, and I hope it's good news because they want us to come to Australia. But it was First Nations collaborating in a recent production. You know, Stellenbosch University renamed one of the buildings Protesteater, right? And that ceremony was last week or the week before. Last week, but we invited an Australian First Nations dance group to collaborate with Garage Dance. They are from Orchid, and that is in celebration of the rites of passage of Protesteater. The rites of passage is, you know, also known as the bloedspoor of the hogmeisiteit that young women go through when their menstrual cycles begin. And the rites of passage, meaning is something that Protesteater never enjoyed while she was in Van Riebeeck's kitchen. And so that ceremony was performed a week ago, a whole week. People from First Nations, Khoi people, got together in Vakkingsvlei and they went through a 5-day ritual while I directed these two groups together with Jolyn Phillips. I don't know if you know it, she's a quite celebrated poet. Die Eugene Maree Prys gewen vir Bentang, wat sy geskryf het 'n paar jaar gelede. En ons het almal die mense bymekaar gekry en soos ek sê, hulle wil vir ons nooi vir volgende jaar. So, okay, waar is ons nou? Ek wil die stories hoor. Okay, wie gaan wat hier? Alright, what is your story about? Ons moet altyd weet, waaroor gaan die story? Even 'n goeie kinderstorie. 'n goeie kinderstorie moet weet waar het wees involve, wie het dit gemaakt en dat gemaakt. En die grootste example van hoekom ons allemaal drama gebeur elke dag. Nee, dit gebeur elke dag. So ons, en hoekom ons geïnteresseerd in drama, dit is dit typisch. Ons vertel stories sodat ons iets kan leer. Right? Dit is altyd wat iets leer. As jy op oomblik met jou omas en opas sit, dan vertel hulle vir jou van alle pille wat hulle gebruik vir knieë, en die rug van sedert en wat jy. Want hulle wil vir hulle susters of broers sê, gebruik daai. Want jy weet, as jy op 'n bus sit of 'n trein sit en iemand begin net 'n storie, weet jy wat het gisteraan gebeur? Dat is almal se ore. Okay, almal se ore is daar, want hier kom drama. Right? En dit is drama. Dit is ons wil luister na wat het gebeur en met wie en waaroor gaan die storie. Right? So ons moet weet waaroor die storie gaan. Okay, do you have a central character? Daar's altyd iemand waaroor jy die storie vertel, van dit jouself is, dit oor jou, van jou, of daar is altyd iemand, en ons vertel stories, daar is altyd 'n karakter, wat 'n mens, en daar is 'n goeie idee. Kijk wat ons soos Richard, wat vertel van die hele gemeenskap, maar nog altyd karakters, wat daarbij toepas. So, kry jou karakter, wie is hy, wat is hy, wie is sy, wat is sy, etc. So, someone, in elke storie, someone wants something. Iemand wil iets hê, en die rede hoekom ons belangstel in die storie is hoe difficult, hoe moeilik is het vir die persoon om die ding te kry. En die rede hoekom ons belangstel in, omdat ons involved raak met die storie, is eintlik die deel, die struggle. Die struggle gedeelte, hoe moeilik is het om daarmee uit te kom vir wat jy wil hê. Ja,
ek wil aansluit daar wat jy sê, Basil, want ek weet nou nie, jy is klaar maak, kan ek maar
Nee.
Weet jy hoe struggle ek nou om regtig in place te kom?
Ja.
En ek dink ook wat jy nou sê is baie waar.
Ja.
Daar is iets wat jy wil bereik.
Ja, jy wil iets bereik en hoe moeilik is dit om daarby uit te kom. En ons as gehore, ons wil die struggle hoor. Ons wil die moeilikheid, die struggle, want hoekom? Want ons wil weet of jy dit kan bereik, of gaan jy dit nie bereik. En as jy 'n storie vertel en jou karakter bereik dit nie, of kry dit wat sy wil hê, of hy wil hê, wat maak hulle met dit? Wat doen hulle met wat hulle bereik het, wat hulle alle doen, wat hulle bereik. Okay, so maar dit is die struggle, daarom wat ons selfies, want daar's drama, baie drama, beteken te veel drama, met elke karakter, wat die en die was altyd, ek wil die mensie hê, of ek wil die man hê, maar die man is getrouwd, gaat ek die man kry, of nie kry nie, en my oma kan dat doen, en my oma gaat vir my uitloos, ek eerpulsie uit, etc. Daarom kyk ons elke dag, dat is drama. Okay. We always identify with the struggle. I want, and okay, what you want is not the same as a need. Okay, and I made the example there because it's quite simple. Ek wil by Robert Island uitkom, dat is my want. Maar wat need ek markeer 'n skip, want dit is 'n eiland. Ek markeer 'n skip om daar uit te gaan. Of 'n helikopter. Ja, maar in classic storytelling is dit nie so maklik as die helikopter wat net 'n paar van die helikopter gaat afbreek so lank as wat. En dan gaan daar ja, of in classic storytelling kom daar 'n gat in die pad. Right? En skielik dink jy, ons gaan nou sing. Okay, so wat gaan jy maak om by die eiland uit te kom? So jy kan dit nie kry. Ons gaat nie. En ek gaat saam met die boot sing. So jy gaan my leven voelen. So een klassieke story vertel, gaan dit of saam met die ding sing, of jy swem. Jy swet. En dan net voor jy en soos ons saam met jou is, terwyl jy swem en sien hoe sterk is jou arms, ek gaan het maak, ek gaan het maak, dis hoop, correct? Dis hoop, ons is saam met jou, want ons wil saam met jou by die dings uitkom, dan kom die shark. Kijk, en hy is by jou been af, en die been is af, en jy kan net met 3 links, kan jy daar by die dings, maar gaan jy daar uitkom. So it's also, I didn't write it down, but it's about, it's a long-term hope. Ons work samen met jou, dat jy daar uitkom. Ja. Ons work samen, Life of Pies, actually classic story, Life of Pies, classic story, dat jy weet van my kind wat of die boot is of whatever. Ons hoop saam met jou dat jy daar gaan uitkom. Maar ons is bang It's your fear. It's your fear that you're not going to make it. It's a short-term fear. As hy kan maak, as hy never mind die voet wat af is, jy weet swem asseblief net om daar uit te kom. So it's about your hopes and fears, and that is the struggle. Okay, that's the struggle for everybody, and that's a good story. Okay, no matter what it is. So, yes, the classic 3-act structure that kan mens verbykom nie. That's Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3, a beginning, middle, and end. En elke storie het dit. Jy weet, in die begin steek jy alles op. Daar is 'n bridge hoe jy daar Act 2 toe gaan. Act 2 is normally in the middle, en dit is 'n definite midpoint iets gebeur. In die eerste act gebeur daar iets met jou central character. Iets gebeur wat sy hele of haar hele lewe gaan verander. Okay? Dan gaan hulle op daai journey. So daai is nog so 10 minute in jou play, gebeur daar iets wat jou hele sentrale karakter, sy was so wonderlik, sy was college, sy was so goeie student, of what have you, in 10 minute is sy pregnant, sy moet die skool los, sy nou gaan trou, haar hele lewe verander, en wat is die journey after that, okay? So, beginning, middle, and end, hoe gaan dit dan, hoe koop sy met wat sy getrek, okay? Turning point with each act, daar's turning points, daar's dinge wat die lewe verander, en dan gebeur daar 'n tweede ding, en 'n derde ding, wat sodat ons bly saam die storie kan groei, en dan reach ons 'n groot plateau, hier na eerste act, dan dink ons, alles gaan nog doen, daar gaan het weer. Okay, daar gaan het weer af. Nou, bly ons weer af. Rising action moet altyd te reis, jy weet. En dan reach ons weer plateau, en dan gaan het weer verder as tweede punt, voor ons kom by. And we all lived happily ever after. Okay, a classic story, that is the end of the resolution. Okay, thank you, Mr. American movies. Okay, turning points, what do we leave out? Yes, ja, jy weet, baie keer, dan vertel ons stories, dan dat sê ons te veel goed. Mens ken, jy ken ook die mense net, die praat te veel. Hulle, soos ek nou. Maar, praat te veel. Wat moet ek uitlos? Wat vat eintlik my storie verder? Jy weet, as die daar seker goed wat ons moet vertel, maar daar is ook dinge wat my gehoor gaan nie baie belangstellend dien nie. Kom ons sny daai van probeer dit kom daai. Okay? World of story, yes. Dit met Protesteater, dit is baie belangrik. Wat is die geskiedenis? Ek het veel vertel van hoe ek protest aangeteken het in die Taalmuseum. Daar is die geskiedenis daarvan. Dit gebeur in daai konteks. As jy die storie bedag word, dan wil jy maar eens mal, hy kon geld gemaak het, die eerste minister was hier, of whatever, was hier, jy kon maar net gewoon gedoen het, maar daar was 'n geskiedenis, en daar was 'n konteks. My pa was secretaris van SACOS. SACOS het gestaan vir normal sport in an abnormal society. That was the circle. So jy kan nie daar gaan compete by die skole en dan moet jy terugkom na jou group areas act toe. En dan of jy gaan soos ek het aan die begin van die jaar jou Mosebal storie gedoen. Jou Mosebal was 'n jong Muslim seun wat hy wou 'n ballet dans gewees. Maar hy kon nie dans en toe besluit die juffrou by UCT om wel van aan te vat in die klas by IGA, right? Maar hy moes agter 'n swart lyn dans. En as hy sy voet oor daai lyn sit, dan kry jy daai looks van die wit studente, wat maak jy hier in ons hart? Daar was ook om gesê, hy sal nooit ooit 'n company kan dansen. In 'n company kan wees nie. Maar toe, hulle smokkel hom in by die town. Want dit was ook nie vir hom nie. Maar hulle smokkel hom daar in en dis 2 onderwysers, balletonderwysers, wat vir hom sien en sê nie, maar die jongs hy een keer 'n scholarship en hy gaan to Engeland. En despite alles, Johanna danced for the Royal Ballet for 25 years, right? Hy het 'n command performance gedoen vir die Queen's Coronation, etc. Hy het 'n lang carrière gehad. Hy kom in 1976 kom hy terug Suid-Afrika toe. Hy maak 'n skool ook vir alle rasse, maar die government at the time, the regime at the time, closed down the school. Hy het skool gehad in die wêreld. Hy het 'n skool gehad in Mitchells Plain. Dis toen nadat hy toegemaak. Maar toe nooi hulle aardskep, dis nog nie oop vir alle rasse nie. Nooi om te kom dans, hy is famous, world famous. Om te kom dans, maar daar's in sy kontrak was daar gesê dat hy mag nie raak aan 'n wit danser. Hy mag veral nie 'n vrou. So die dans, hy mag nie raak aan haar nie, hy mag nie haar hande nie, hy mag nie dit of dat doen nie. Gelukkig het die karakter die gloves gehad. Hy sê dit self, gelukkig het hy gloves gedaan, is Petrushka, is een Russian ballet, dat hy word gespeeld met gloves, so hy het daar probleem gehad, die oude dit het gesê, hy mag nie met sy kaal hande aan vrou raak of so nie. Maar dit was bizar, jy weet, en, maar ek het ook, ek het nog vergeet, sy storie vertel, in het begin, en was in ouerhuise, en daar baie, alle rasse en gejaars daar, en daar, man, hy is ook 96 hierdie jaar, maar het was groot celebration, en hy kom door, man, dis gesê, die laaste story, history, social context, dit het nou net explain, economic conditions, jy weet, wat vir altyd weet, hoeveel geld het jy weet, is armoede, kom jy armoede, of jy by jou hoes by vertel, wat gaan nou. Right, religion, ons stel altyd belang, religion, soos ek sê, jong, Muslim boy, wanting to dance ballet. Ja, jy weet, dit was glad nie gesien. Die imam Harun het vir hom sy blessing gegee en gesê gaan dans. Jy weet, maar sy familie was natuurlijk gekant. Sy mense was natuurlijk so het gewoon challenges gehad. So imagine die struggle met religion and what's his name? And the last one, what did I say?
Focus.
Yes, focus. It's probably the most important. The most important. Je weet, kijk, Afrikaans het een gewoonte, ons begint te vertellen. Dan gaan maak je het draai, dan testen, dan ga je het stellen bak, dan kom je het terugpeer op doen, en dan voor je weet dat je weer daar in de retreat kan. Maar ja, jij moet focus blijven. Gefocust blijven, je moet weten wat is je story en waar te gaan. Oké, ik wil nou stories horen. So, wie gaan volunteer om eerst, jij bent nog niet opvak,
Nou, ek gaan maar eers begin, want ek dink my storie is baie om te vertel, maar ek gaan binne die minuut bly.
Okay.
Okay, vir almal wat my nie ken nie, die eerste party wat my ken, dan is van Wellington. Ek gaan nie my geboorte en lewensgeskiedenis vertel, ek gaan net sê, ek is nou 'n chairperson by NGO called Angels of Hope. Hier is my jong groepie. Hulle is nog nie almal hier, daar is nog van die jong kinders by die huis, maar van ons allemaal, sal ek maar opgezet tot best. Universiteit. My story is eindelijk, ek het gewerk en ek het belangstellend in drama en acting. En ek het nog so ver gekom om backdrops of TV extras te wees. 18 Mei was ek op sy poster in die koffieshop. Dit is nog altyd my droom. Gedigte skryf. Ek het die taal en die mense corona en ek die tweede prys nie afsluit. Vir corona virus, maar niet 'n funny gedig gewees het. En ek weet ek bring in die Queen van Engeland met 'n hakskoentjies wat opbouwelijk naar die Parel. Ek het nog steeds gedaan. Maar ek eindig wel sê, Basil remind nou weer terug aan my hoërskool daar. Ons kon nie naalwerke kry, ons kon nie huisopkundige kry die bedag kreëer. En ek kon nou op die dag 'n top fashion designer gewees het. Al dink mense ek is eerder Marliens. Ek kan 'n one-man play akteur gewees het. Want mense dink ek is maar op te nie. Maar ek het so ver gekom om 11 aande te speel in ou meelteater, Kinkels in die Kabel, van Andre Pieper. Nee? Ken julle die boek? Ja, maar gaan kyk het gelis. Toe is daar 'n opportunity vir my, ou audisie in Milnerton. En daar moet ek het nog ook eerlik jammer sê, ek dink daar moet verandering kom, want ek was die enigste klere wat plaai het. En toe kry ek nie die rol nie, gelukkig ook, want dit is net so 'n manuskrip wat ek alles saak gedaan ondersien. Maar ek het toe die tannie het my of die direkteur het my gesien en gesê jy kom al die pad van Parel Wellington, is 'n voltydse werker en ek wil vir jou nie verloor nie. Maar ek gaan vir jou maak staatsdirekteur. En daar het ek elke aand Kaap toe gery. Niet, ek word nie betaal nie, want is volunteer, acting. Maar steeds daarin, dan heb ik het geleerd van props in, on time, in goeders, in you name it. Maar ik heb nog nooit opgeschreven daar van die. En nou eigenlijk, heb ik steeds gedacht, ik heb ingeschreven bij Jack Schermel en ik hoop op het draai, gaan mijn story raak zien en lees. Want my belangstelling en my droom en my visie is om my eie dag en nog een dag te hê. En ek kan aangaan, maar al wat ek kan vandag vir julle jong mense, moet nooit ophou droom nie. En moet willig droom wat gaan nie. Want droom is de best. Dankie.
Mijn naam is Logan. Ik ben een klein beetje friendly, zeg maar. Ik heb opa gaan lopen was van een soort. Nou, na jaren zijn ouders gesterven en dat komt van toen dat is als gevolg van valgoed. En zijn enkel besluit zijn leven was in gevaar en gewoon ik de zoekdijk weg van. En zijn enkel brengt voor ons nou hier toe naar de kleine kapen. Meestal moeten we nou kleren aan een vrouw, niet trouwen kleren aan een vrouw. En dat moest nou waar in toets, hij moest nou zijn kennis namelijk hij één ding wat hij gedaan had, was hij voor allemaal van zijn kennis beleid om enigszins zijn zwart geloof aan te vatten of te belang te stellen. Because omdat hij nog steeds onduidelijk gebleven bang was voor het gevaar van wat moest nog gebeuren in verzekering dat hij wil niet. Zijn familie en diezelfde gevaren zijn. Zo ja, ik maar ja, het is een klein stukje.
Daar is een ding wat my nogals baie griep en kwaad maak, sal ek maar amper sê. Waarom is ons ouer mense, amper sal ek sê, word nie raak gesien nie. Ek was nou onlangs vir speelgroep of speeltoneel, vir 'n audisie. En, hulle het gesê, dis ook, toe daar comments op Facebook, what about the old age people? En toe sê ek maar, daar sê jy ouderdom gekoppel aan nie, it's open for anybody, so you can go. En ek het geweet, ek gaan daar geleentheid vat. En as ek nou 2 weke wat ek nou antwoord gekry, onsuksesvol whatever. Ek is tevrede, maar ek weet, die focus was net op die jong groep. So ek dink ons community 'n bietjie kyk kort na dit. Daar is van ons wat nog steeds wil aangaan en daar is van ons wat die geleentheid kry.
So my opa was dit. Nou, ofwel sy ouers het dan de gaan gekom en my opa groot is 'n paar kalkstrom. En obviously was hy het kalkstrom groot gemaak, my opa groot. Hy het nou, my ouma grootjie is nou 'n paar maande gelede oorlede. En die rede hoekom ek dit nog so vertel is omdat hy het my vertel toe alle hele aangebied waar die stoep was. Nou, hy het elke dag voorbij gestap. Nou, daar was hy vertel dat hy elke dag 'n vrou gesien met 'n lang gebreide jersey by 'n watergat. En het elke dag voorbij gestap met die gedagte, eendag gaat die vrou nog uitverraai. So. En eendag het hy net die courage gehad. En wat verraai, wil hy nie saam met my net vanaf gaan dansen. Toen zei sy nee, hoekom sal ek van my opa was kleerlik, maar was wit. So het was 'n bietjie snaaks vir haar om saam met 'n wit man uit te gaan. En eventually hulle uitgegaan en daar was nou te einde aan haar. Totdat sy afgestudeer het en hy kan nog steeds vandag histories vertel oor hoe hulle verdrukking was, maar nog steeds epic te bring.
Fantasties. Soos ek sien, jy weet persoonlike stories. Ek het altyd die woorde van die persoonlijke stories. En die story vertel, die act 1, act 2, act 3, soos ek gesê het, ons is allemaal natuurlijk story vertel. Die baie mense vertel, die context, lig van kleerde man, so opgegroeid, die vrou moet het kry, sy is bang om saam de wit man uit te gaan, et cetera, wonderlijk.
Oké, misschien voor die benefit of the young people, wat nou baie gehoor geoefend van die verdrukking. Ik zal net zo'n klein highlights geven van onze kant hier, nee? Zo dat dan jullie gaan misschien meer connect met wat ons destijds hier gaan ik weg. Maar met jong mensen, hulle het jy 'n klou van die wettelijke verdrukking wat plaasgevind het. Iets wat bijna aangeraakt het in het geraakt. Soms heb ik emotional, ik wou niet eigenlijk iets zeggen in zo'n voorbeeld. Die tijden wanneer hulle die veiligheidsmachten aan je deuren kom kloppen, jou. Dit is nou iets wat ik nog persoonlijk ondervind het als een jong skaam dochter in die huis. Ik heb met broers groot geraakt, ik heb baie beschermd groot geraakt en dan kom hulle in jou slaapkamer in die middel van die nacht. Hulle skyn daar groot split op jou en hulle trek jou kombers van jou af as 'n jong meisie. Dit was iets wat amper nie weggaan was weet af nie. Maar ons moet miskien ook 'n bietjie meer ons peers vertel. Hulle wat nog lewe. En ja, Die myne nie, maar die wat so die 60 dae in tronk wel was en soos ek kan sê my broer was Easter in die tronk, ek was Kersfees in die tronk, ek was hier aan die tronk. En hulle was hulle verjaardag, 21ste verjaardag aan die tronk. Dit was
Thank you for sharing that story. It's very important. And as I say, what attracts me to all the story of activists and people who went through a hard time in this country. It's almost like people expect the Protesteater to be something of the past. And for me, it's important that we look at the past. Only when we look at the past, we can move on. We do have to look at the past in order to move on. You know, there are lots of people who want to just sweep it under the carpet. That era is gone. Can't you learn to forget? Can't you learn to forgive? Can't you just move on? No, we can only move on once we look at it under a big spotlight to say, this is what happened. This is how brutal it was. This is how that a young girl is tearing the blankets from you. It's an invasion of your privacy, of your human. It's dehumanizing. You know, even if you're just there. We were talking about the wives also of people who were incarcerated all the time. Those people couldn't cope later on in life. They didn't go to prison. Their husbands maybe went to prison, or their partners went to prison, whether it's male or female. It doesn't matter. The one who stays at home, the mothers of this nation, who sat there with what are they doing to my son, because a lot of them didn't come out alive. People died within this prison. Because of the torture. Okay, more. And also, why I'm asking for these stories is because you have now got other issues, right? This gender-based violence, there is stranger danger when you come to us to watch my niece being on the telephone from morning till night and playing whatever. Who is she meeting? What is does she know how many dangers there's lurking out there with strangers that you feel comfortable speaking in your home? What is that? There are new issues here. So I would love to hear from you what those issues are, because we need to put that out to the world. And I mean, essentially, theatre is holding up a mirror to our people and say, hey, look at yourselves here. Look at yourselves. This is how we deal with things now, and this is what happens. You know, so that we can make sure that it doesn't happen again, or we can at least start talking about it. You know, most of these plays in the Netherlands, when we traveled, I was telling Samuel, they're fond of talking. They're fond of talking, they come and watch the productions, but the most important part almost after seeing a play is they want to talk about it. They want to talk about the issues, they want to address the issues, etc. So that's almost the more important, and we need to get a little bit of that culture where we actually sit around tables like this and talk about the issues that are affecting us. Okay, so that we can start doing things about it. And I must say, at the end of the day, every play must entertain, really, in some way or another. So it's not only about seriousness of the thing. You must find humor, you must find the irony in certain stories, you must see the funny things. in that particular story. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just want to join on that point. Like, how do you engage audiences, or how do you convince someone to come watch your show? If it is this sort of very serious subject matter, but you do make it entertaining or worthwhile for people, like
Dis interaktiewe.
ja, gaan dit ondanks dat is.
Dit is baie moeilik.
Baie moeilik storie, maar dis reg vir mense byvoorbeeld soos stem dit is reg. So wat gebeur is.
Yeah, but look, it is really the play on irony. You know, the play of, of actually seeing, and I think South Africans actually have got that ability.
Yes.
To look at ourselves and not taking ourselves too seriously all of the time, but at the same time sending a message that this is real, you know, and not taking ourselves too seriously, always seeing the humor within a situation. I mean, the story about Richard Reed tells the story of the whole community, but it is hilarious. Some of it is really hilarious when you look at character, when you look at, there was an acceptance of the status quo, you know, but actually never taking ourselves too seriously. And then it almost hits harder when you have found that level of, even the Lagumas in their love story, you know, when they look back on it, and, you know, the guy is being in the prison, his interaction with the policeman, etc. At some point, although it was brutal, you could see the light side of it as well. Even being in prison, the characters he meets, he tells with the sense of humor. And I think it's that part. In the Lagumas, I also used dancing. They were social dancers. So every movement and what we had a kind of dance. They were waltzing, they were quick stepping, they were doing the foxtrot. When they ended up in Havana, they were doing the rumba together, you know. And it acted as a metaphor for their lives, because they could dance together. It's the rest of the world who couldn't dance with them, you know. And so we find ways of dealing with a serious issue, but there's relief in the seriousness of it. Okay.
Okay. I like what we asked Basil, and just got to my mind. I was watching in Nederland, and as
what is that? What?
That gay movie of the black man.
Yeah.
And as a representative of the LGBTQI, you can take that movie to the community, but it wouldn't say they will change their perspective or that kind of people, because it's individual itself, where you see a different perspective. Yes, and you can take the movie, as he said, how you take the movie to the community where they come. But still they can come, but it doesn't say they will change their attitude or they will still be abused.
I think that I said it earlier. If you change two people's perceptions, it's a lot. Okay, we don't often hope to change our whole world in presenting something like that. And yes, the LGBTQ community, I've got a whole celebration happening with Women's Month at Saturday Artscape. But recently there was a whole hullabaloo with Woolworths standing with a t-shirt. What's its name? And the LGBTQ community comes from a long way back. I mean, I'm talking about drag artists in this sense, who were really seen as part of the community. You know, there was no actual, and I think in 2023, I mean, this, you know, the drag queens were alive while the 50s in District 6. It was actually seen as a form of entertainment. It was like the high days and holidays, and everyone in the community accepted that it's there while it's alive. In 2023, okay. All right. Another story. I want to hear from you.
Ek is baie gereed. Sorry. My story is gekomen oor my opa. Sy naam is Hannes.
Wat is jou naam?
Byron. Hy is van Rosenwald. Was in sy jonge dae baie lief vir foto. Gestaan en hy was baie lief vir dans. So almal het hom geken as Rosie mama. En die oude nog hier gestaan. En ik ken aan die tijd 2 dames losgedans. En ze zijn vrienden over het vragen, wij doen het vliet is vragen, maar wat team gaat er nog kiezen? Dan je zegt, ja maar die fight weet. In het vak met mensen als je iemand is wat likt heeft met die gevallen is met een bekleding weet. En daar is het van die symbolen. Het was misschien fysisch, maar het was wel wat je representation van de. En vandaag kan ik zien dat hij vraagt hij waar je wat die fight gewinnen.
Wonderlijk, dat is wonderlijk. Maar die eerste feit dat je in daarom is, jij hebt dat zelf? Ja. Oké. Lovely. Oké, nog een story.
Mijn naam is Roman.
Mijn naam is?
Ronwin.
Oké, Ronwin. Ja, Ron. Ja.
Ik heb zo'n background van oma grootje, wat destijds. Zij was soos wat die story aan my oorgedra het, was sy baie krampie en maar liefdevolle mens. Krampie maar liefdevolle mens. 'n vrou wat ook in groter word. So sy het die liefde gehad het almal met daai krampiness al liefde uit te straal aan 'n community. So sy was die oma gewees, almal het haar genas tipi man. Sy was die oma gewees wat een verdrukking, zoals het nog in apartheid jaar, was zij, hoe kan ik mezelf stellen? Zij was een sterke vrouw, een enkel ma met 12 kinderen. Ja, een enkel ma met 12 kinderen. En moest als man en vrouw in je huis staan. So die ironie van die story is dat sy het haar kinders groot gemaakt asof sy hulle nie redig lief gehad het nie, want sy het die rol van die rol van apartheid uitgeleef, soos ek nou so myself sal stel. Sy het hulle sma met 'n pot geslaat. En een pot geslaat op. Een of ander ding as ek daarna in die kospot staan, ek kry dis maar sopliep. As sopliep van die ouwe staan, want sy moet maniere hê. So sy het daar maniere in haar huis en sy het zwaar afgedwongen van kinders deur hulle zwaar verdrukking te leer. Deur hulle met 'n zwaar ding, met 'n zwaar aangroot te maak. So ja, dis 'n storie.
Ja, so my naam is Agent. Ja, en so omdat dit maar 12 kinders gehad en ons oma is die oudste losbeen van die ja, haar naam is Sierra. En sy is ook 'n enkelma van 4 kinders. Sy het 'n groot liefdesteleurstelling gehad. En so sy my vertel is dat sy was actually baie lief vir ons ouers gepakt. Maar omdat dit maar dit toegelaat dat sy met hom moest trouwen, nie, want hy was Indiër. En toen my opa probeer, ik was nog fighting om aan dit te maken, maar hij wil mij en hij wil eigenlijk fight. En toen het mijn opa daar aan die nacht, zeker 2 uur, als me van om aan dit te maken voor zijn zuster, in die rij loopt door huis toe. Maar om aan het in Chicago gebleven. En de gangsters laat voor me met de banga, die vlies. En hij had toen terug, dat wat ik was huis toe. En dan had ik maar zei om, niet meer zoeken jullie niet, want zij is een gangster, dit is weer een gangster, omdat jullie was album. En dan had ik maar gedronken. En zij zei van mij, oma, zij moet niet zo gaan. Maar hij, alles zoekt niet meer naar veel. En gooi voor me niet zo. En toen, actually voor mijn oma gevraagd om de trouwlijn te gaan. En mijn oma had skelm is gezegd, ik wou me niet trouwen. Van oma titi me uit. En mijn oma titi me zei, maar ze kan niet meer om trouwen, want zij moet kijken naar broers en naar zusters. Want zij is nou zoals mijn oma titi me zo'n man, die paan is. Zo heeft mijn oma nooit getrouwd met mij. Ze is 7 jaar oud, met 4 kinders en 7 kleinkinders.
Ja. Dat is een wonderlijke story. Ik hoop dat hij zat gooien. Niet maar, het was met alles weer eens. Het was met natuurlijke story vertel. Nee, dat was die 2 karakters. Dat was een love story. Mensen houden van een love story. Dat die man of die vrouw kan niet de man krijgen. En ons allemaal, zoals zie je ze. Ons wil nog altijd iets weten van liefde. Het klinkt betekenen uit cliché, but we want love. Okay, we are interested in love. So that's why love is always a universal story. It touches everybody, and everybody will follow that story. En vooral wil ons weet, sy het liefdesgeleerstelling gehad het en sy wil die man gehad het, maar daar is forces. En sometimes is it unnatural forces, wat teen dit is baie goeie storie. En hopelijk dan was violence op tussen van die gangsters wat vir hom aangepak het, want nou kom jy daar aan by die liefde van jou lewe wat ook vir jou leef, maar jy lyk nou so 'n gangster. So ja, so alles stel teen jou. Jy weet, met die ding wat jy eintlik wil hê, gaan nou nie gebeur nie, want ek kan soos 'n gangster in Chicago. Okay, alright, okay, lovely story. Okay, kom nog.
Mijn naam is Yusuf.
Yusuf?
Yusuf, ja, ik zie het
Okay.
My oma grootjie is, hulle toe is oma grootjie. Ek het eendag vir my oma gevra, oma Shelly, maar oma waar vind vir my of ons kleinkinders en familie se liefde vir musiek en sy het vir my gesê, my oma grootjie, se kerel ja, so goed is het man.
So goed is het?
So man.
Okay.
Was op piano's. Hij het bij pubs gespeeld, bij clubs, hij het bij functies gespeeld van mensen. En een dag het sy besluit, nee maar, vrouw mensen komen aan elkaar bij die deur klop en vragen me waar is die man. So ik ga het jou toelaten om weer te gaan spelen. En op die andere heel veel, maar dat is een groot geleentheid en het gaat voor mij baie baat. En sy sê vaak kom, dan samen. En dan die geleentheid toe en hy sê, maak toe paar richting als en de rest weg. Met daarna kom, toe hulle uitkom, vraag die vrou maar, sê die vrou vir hom, en sy kan vanavond samen huis kom. Nou hy die vrou te pa, en sy sê die vrou, Marie, die man het sy blie. Ik kan ook niet daar gaan, we gaan dus binnen 5 jaar as hulle baie kwaad vir mekaar. En dit is Ik krijg daar mijn liefde in ons bambise lief van muziek gekomen. En hij was bijna lief van muziek geweest. En het was zo, loopbaan van al dat hij niet geleerd was aan.
Oké.
Dankie, Jesus. Dat is wonderlijk. En ik is blij dat we praten met iets uit HIV, want dit is vandagse issues nog altijd. De mensen gaan nog altijd deel van HIV. En betekent ignorance, wat vandaag is bij een manageable disease, dus anders diabetes, maar mensen willen in het hospitaal gaan niet doen dat als bang. Mensen gaan altijd last daarvan. Zo, en dit is vandagse stroom. Dus baie dankie dat je dit opgenomen hebt.
Mijn naam is Basil en ik was van de Europa grootje. Maar ik was op elkaar zo maar reizen mens. Maar een gedacht met alles aan de waarheid traditioneel moet ik zo ik zei ook de dokter om een keer om traditioneel te trouwen als gevolg van die dokter wat ik moet betalen om je vrouw te trouwen. Toen we daar net die vrouw geleerd hadden, daar 3 kinderen gemaakt. Maar die oudste dochter heeft geweigerd na die 8 jaar met zijn vrouw was leven van traditioneel in. Het zich geweigerd dat ik hier een vrouw moet trouwen. Toen we daar op elkaar gaan om die vrouw te gaan trouwen, maar na die 8 jaar gekozen om me te trouwen. Maar ze gauw die vrouw niet. Die 8 jaar weer na het trouwen, kan ze 15 jaar na die vrouw getrouwd in het bokhuis. Ik kan niet meer komen, waar hij met die andere vrouw. Maar het was niet zijn dochter, maar ze heeft meer kinderen dat zijn dochter was. Hij was moslim getrouwd. Die moslim traditioneel niet gevolgd. Traditioneel geloof dat gevolg samen doen. Toen die oudste dochter laat zien dat zij met haar zit en ik is niet klein. Om die traditioneel te vervoeren wat goed voor. Want ze was een moslim geweest. En zij alle 2 kinderen op de stad. Dan gaan we niet veranderen. Dat hier een baas was. 15 jaar nadat toen hij stierf, toen was hij een bekleed op die erfenis moet wees. Maar toen zei mijn oma zijn stempel en dat ze een moslim moet wees. Als ze toen geloven staan.
Wauw. Daar is een story, epic. Dat is epic. Het is epic, want we praten van culturen, wat clash in die tensions. We praten van religious tension en dat. Kijk, dit is alle ingrediënts voor een baie goede story. Daar is nie net een film is een telenovelle wat voor zijn poster gaat schaam maak. Oké. Luister mensen, ik was er niet gemaakt. Dat ons is al way dit. Oké, ons is al langer dan 2 uurtjes. So ongelukkig moet ons nou daar stop. Oké. Zodat jy nou transport kan hê en so, maar en ek weet ek kan het weer doen of kijken en meer stories te hoor, want ek wil nog die stories uitgebeeld sien. En wat alles wat van een persoonlijke ondervinding afkomt. Die stories, hulle resoneer met jouself en met ons tegelijkertijd. Je weet het, en als ik je vraag om dat story te vertellen, dat is het nooit gehoord. Zo ik is zo blij dat ik vraag specifiek, maar om die story te vertellen. En dan moet je ook nooit denken en geïntimideerd voelen. Die andere mensen stories. Die andere mensen stories, dat is alle story. Ik heb ook mijn story. En ik heb Richard 3. The story is I'm writing, but I did ook een biografie van mezelf geschreven, autobiografie. En hij zei, ik schrijf mijn story want my lewe is so belangrik of onbelangrik soos jou. Okay. So dat jou storie is of belangrik of onbelangrik soos die next persoon se. So jy moet trots wees waar dit dan kom, veral waar jy vandaan kom. Jy moet trots wees op jou eie storie. Okay, dit is van so baie ouma grootjies en ouma grootjies gehoor, persoonlike stories, stories van intimidation en brutality van die apartheidsbeleid. Maar elke storie hoef daar te gaan nie. En elke storie hoef nie specifiek oor racisme te gaan. Dat is de cultural interaction in the story. There's love. There's violence, there is HIV and AIDS, there's gender-based violence. Allemaal die stories is belangrijk. So mense, ek sê baie dankie en hoor ons kan weet van.
Baie dankie Basil, baie dankie julle. Ons theater wil graag die volgende mense bedank vir wat die dag moontlik gemaak het. Basil, baie dankie vir die kennis van die Protesteater wat jy vir ons kom wys het en ek is seker van ieder en elke kind wat vandag hier sit. Die storie konsep besef. Ek dankie vir jou bydrae. Ek dankie vir hartseer en dankie vir die lag. En dankie vir die deel, dit is hoekom ons hier is, om te deel met mekaar. Dankie dan vir Colin en sy vrou vir die videografie, baie dankie. Ons waardeer Karel, dankie dat jy jou groepie gebring het. Natasha, wat op so kort kennis gegee van hierdie tafels volgemaak het. Jy's 'n angel, baie dankie vir jou. Dan wil ons net vir Tangelo dankie sê, dit is sy eerste keer as kameraman en klankman, ek dink hy het hom goed van sy taak gekwyt, né? En Shamai, baie dankie vir alles wat jy vandag gedoen het. Want as dit die taal is nie, is dit die laptop. Is dit die laptop, dan is dit die internet, dan is dit, well done, thank you very much. Okay, baie dankie vir almal van julle wat vandag hier was, het was amazing.